Tonight, I want you to think about the last normal night you remember. Not a big night, not a holiday, just a regular one. Dinner on the table, phones charging by the bed. An alarm set for the morning you were already annoyed about. Nothing felt wrong. Nothing felt important. Now imagine this. Everyone in an entire city goes to sleep that night, and tomorrow never comes. No explosions, no sirens, no goodbye notes taped to doors, just silence. Because the scariest stories in history aren't the loud ones, they're the quiet ones. The ones that happen while you're brushing your teeth, while kids are being tucked into bed, while shopkeepers are locking up and saying, "See you tomorrow." This is not a story about panic. It's not a story about disaster. It's a story about a night that felt completely normal. A city where families finished dinner. Children fell asleep mid-sentence. Streetlights flicked on like they always had. And without anyone noticing, everything stopped. Tonight, we're not asking what happened right away. We're starting earlier than that. We're starting with the night before. Because sometimes, the most terrifying moment in history is the one where nothing feels wrong at all. Welcome back. This is life the night before. Nobody remembers a night like this as important. That's the strange part. If you were there, you wouldn't mark it on a calendar. You wouldn't take photos. You wouldn't hug anyone longer than usual. It was just a night. The sun went down the same lazy way it always did. Not dramatic, not scary. Just orange fading into blue, like it had done 1,000 times before. The sky didn't warn anyone. No red alarms, no weird clouds shaped like doom. Just a regular evening sky, doing its job. Inside the houses, dinner was happening. Someone somewhere was overcooking rice. Someone else burned the bottom of the pan and said, "It's fine, just scrape it." A father complained about work. A mother reminded everyone to eat vegetables. A teenager stared at their phone like it was the most serious thing in the universe. A younger kid asked for dessert before even finishing food, because of course they did. Plates clinked, glasses filled with water. A TV played in the background, loud enough to hear but not loud enough to listen. The news was on, but no one really cared. It talked about weather, sports, some argument far away. Nothing urgent, nothing that said, "Hey, pay attention, this matters." Because nothing felt like it mattered more than dinner. Across the street, another family was doing the same thing. Different food, same energy. Someone laughed at a bad joke. Someone rolled their eyes. Someone said, "I'm tired." That sentence was everywhere that night. Tired from school, tired from work, tired from life, normal tired. After dinner, dishes were left in the sink. Not because people were lazy, but because they thought, "I'll do it tomorrow." There was always tomorrow. The plates could wait. Kids brushed their teeth badly, too fast, barely trying. Parents reminded them twice, 3 times. "Don't forget to rinse." "Did you even use soap?" A kid said yes. It was probably a lie, a harmless lie, the kind that never matters. Bedtime stories were read. Some were half read, honestly. Parents skipped pages, changed voices for characters, but forgot which voice belonged to who. Kids didn't care. They were already drifting. One child asked a deep question, like, "Do dogs dream?" The parent said, "Yeah, probably." Good enough. Lights clicked off. Nightlights glowed softly. A stuffed toy fell off a bed and stayed on the floor. Nobody picked it up. There was no rush. Outside, shopkeepers were closing up. A metal shutter came down slowly, making that loud rattling sound that echoes down empty streets. Someone locked a door and checked it twice. Another shop owner counted cash, frowned, then shrugged. Tomorrow will be better, they said out loud, to no one. A corner store sold its last item of the day. Maybe candy, maybe cigarettes, maybe milk for a late dinner. The cashier yawned, stretched their arms, and thought about going home, about food, about sleep. Someone forgot to turn the sign to closed. It didn't matter. Streetlights flicked on one by one, that soft yellow glow that makes everything look calm and slightly unreal. Bugs gathered around them like tiny planets. Shadows stretched longer. The city slowed its breathing. Cars passed, but not many. A horn beeped somewhere far away. Not angry, just a quick tap. Someone was probably saying hi, or hurry up, or move. Dogs barked, cats jumped fences. Somewhere, music played from an open window. Not loud, just enough to float into the street. A love song, or maybe something sad, hard to tell. People checked their phones one last time before sleep, scrolled through photos, liked things, ignored messages they didn't feel like answering, thought, I'll reply tomorrow. Tomorrow was a very popular idea that night. In one house, a couple argued quietly. Not a big fight, just tired words. You never listen. I'm just stressed. They went to bed angry, backs turned, thinking they'd talk it out later. In another home, someone fell asleep smiling, maybe thinking about a date, maybe about a new job, maybe about nothing at all. Someone made plans, someone canceled plans. Someone set an alarm for early morning. Someone forgot to set an alarm and trusted their body clock like a fool. Clocks ticked. Microwaves blinked 12 o'clock because nobody bothered to fix them. A lamp was left on in the living room. Curtains stayed half open. Doors stayed unlocked. Not because people were careless, but because they felt safe. This place was safe. It always had been. There were no soldiers, no sirens, no evacuation notices, no one packing bags or hiding valuables, no whispers of danger, no last phone calls saying, I love you, just in case. Nothing cinematic, just people getting ready for sleep. Somewhere, someone said, good night. Someone else answered, night. Someone forgot to say it at all. The city didn't feel like it was holding its breath. It felt relaxed, heavy, ready to rest. If you zoomed out high above the streets, you'd see a place doing what places do at night. Power humming, lights blinking, windows going dark one by one, life powering down. Everything was in the right place. Everyone went to bed expecting tomorrow. That's the detail that hurts the most, because tomorrow was supposed to mean breakfast, school, work, complaints, jokes, coffee that tasted bad, traffic, plans that might change, and tomorrow was supposed to be boring. No one knew this was the last normal night, and that's why it looked exactly like every other one. The morning that never started morning was supposed to arrive quietly. It always did. The sky began to change color, like it was stretching after sleep. Dark blue turned lighter, then gray, then that soft pale light that sneaks in through curtains and makes you squint even before opening your eyes. Alarms were supposed to go off. One was set for 6:30, another for 7. Someone had 3 alarms because they didn't trust themselves. Phones sat on nightstands, fully charged, ready to buzz and scream and ruin dreams. They never did. Coffee makers were programmed the night before. Tiny red lights blinked, promising warmth and energy. The smell of coffee was meant to crawl through houses and wake people gently. The machines stayed silent. In kitchens, Bread waited to be toasted. Eggs waited to be cracked. Lunchboxes waited to be packed in a rush, with someone saying, "We're late, hurry up." No one hurried. The streets should have filled slowly, one door opening, then another. Someone stepping out half awake, locking up, checking pockets for keys like they always forgot them, even when they didn't. But the doors stayed closed. A school bus was parked at the corner, empty. It always arrived in early. The driver usually complained about kids being loud. Today, there were no kids to complain about. The engine was off, no schedule to keep. Sunlight hit the buildings and revealed things exactly how they were left. A bicycle leaned against a wall, slightly crooked. A newspaper sat on a doorstep, untouched. A dog leash hung by a door, ready for a walk that never came. Inside bedrooms, beds were still warm. Blankets were messy. Pillows were dented. Someone had kicked one sock off in their sleep. Someone slept with one arm hanging off the bed, like gravity might steal it. People looked peaceful, annoyingly peaceful. No signs of struggle, no panic, no wide eyes frozen in fear. Just faces stuck in sleep, mid-dream. Whatever those dreams were, they didn't get a chance to finish. Clocks kept moving, that's the creepy part. Time didn't stop just because people did. Second hands kept ticking like nothing was wrong. Digital clocks changed minutes. Hours passed. Outside, the city waited. Birds showed up anyway. They landed on windowsills, on rooftops, on wires. They chirped like usual, confused but committed to the routine. A bird does not care if a city disappears. A bird just sings. Traffic lights changed colors. Red, green, yellow, over and over. No cars came, no one crossed. The lights did their job for nobody. A bakery down the street should have opened at 7:30. The lights stayed off. Bread never went into the oven. Someone somewhere would later think, "That's strange." But there was no one left to think it. Phones should have started ringing. Bosses calling employees. Mothers calling children. Friends texting, "You up?" Notifications should have stacked up. Missed calls. Missed everything. Nothing happened. Milk bottles sat outside doors, warming slowly in the sun. A delivery truck never came to collect the empties. The milks spoiled in silence. In one apartment, a TV was still on from the night before. Static filled the room. A laugh track from a late-night show played to an empty couch. The joke ended. The laughter faded, so then static again. It felt like the city was waiting for permission to continue, like it didn't realize yet that something was wrong. By mid-morning, the quiet became loud. Cities aren't supposed to be this quiet. Silence is normal in small doses, at night, early morning, but this was different. Heavy, thick, like sound itself had packed up and left. A wind pushed a loose paper down the street. It scraped against the ground, making the only noise for blocks. It felt rude, almost. Shadows moved as the sun climbed higher. Buildings threw long shapes across empty roads. Parked cars reflected the sky. Their windshields were dusty, untouched by hands that should have been there. Some doors were open, not broken, just open. Someone stepped out and never stepped back in. A light flickered inside. A fan spun slowly in a bedroom, pushing air around for no reason. Food sat half-eaten on tables from the night before. Fruit flies would have loved it. But even they seemed late to the party. In a hospital, machines beeped steadily. Beds were occupied. Patients lay exactly how they were left. Nurses never came for morning rounds. Doctors never checked charts. The machines kept working. That's another scary thing. Systems don't care. Electricity flows. Water runs. gas lines stay ready. The world keeps offering services to people who are no longer there to use them. By noon, the sun was bright and honest. No hiding now, no shadows to soften things. The cities stood fully exposed. And still, nothing. No movement, no voices, no footsteps, no doors opening in confusion. No one asking, is it just me, or is something off today? Because there was no one left to ask. Whatever happened didn't leave a note, didn't leave clues, didn't bother explaining itself. It didn't tear the city apart. It didn't break things. It just removed the people, like erasing pencil marks, but leaving the paper clean. The morning had arrived, but life hadn't shown up for it. And somewhere between night and sunrise, without noise or warning, tomorrow never came. The first people to notice the world didn't stay empty forever. It just stayed empty long enough to feel wrong. The first people to notice weren't heroes. They weren't scientists or soldiers or anyone with a cool movie soundtrack behind them. They were just late. A truck driver was supposed to pass through the city before sunrise. He overslept. It happens. He blamed his alarm, rubbed his eyes, grabbed bad gas station coffee, and got back on the road. When he reached the edge of the city, he slowed down. No traffic. At first, he liked it. Empty roads are a gift. No honking. No idiots cutting you off. He rolled through a green light that had no reason to exist anymore. That's when the feeling started. You know that feeling when a room is too quiet? Like even your thoughts sound loud? That one. He passed parked cars, lots of them. Too many for a place this calm. He passed houses with lights still on, a TV glowing blue behind curtains, a door standing open like someone had just stepped out for a second. No people. He stopped the truck and got out. "Hello?" he called. His voice bounced back at him, awkward and alone. Cities aren't supposed to echo like that. That's more of a cave thing. He laughed once, a nervous little laugh, the kind that says, "Relax, man, you're being weird." Then he noticed the smell. Not death, not smoke, just old food, coffee gone cold, something burned and forgotten, a normal smell that shouldn't still be hanging around this late in the day. He checked his phone, full bars, no messages, no emergency alerts, nothing saying, by the way, everyone's gone. He got back in his truck and drove away, fast. Later that morning, a woman hiking in the hills above the city stopped at a lookout point. She came here often. It was peaceful, a good place to think. She looked down and frowned. The city looked fine, too fine. No traffic moving, no people in the park, no smoke rising from chimneys, no tiny signs of life that you don't notice until they're missing. It looked like a picture. She pulled out binoculars, zoomed in, saw laundry hanging on a line, saw a dog sitting in a yard, tied up, waiting. Saw a stroller parked near a doorway. No movement. Her stomach dropped. She called it in. Park services, local police, anyone who would listen. At first, they thought she was joking. Then they checked traffic cameras. Nothing moved. That's when curiosity turned into fear. The first responders didn't rush in with sirens blazing. That would have felt wrong. They approached slowly, like the city might wake up if startled. Police cars rolled in, doors opened, officers stepped out, hands resting near radios, not weapons. This wasn't a crime scene yet. It was just strange. They knocked on doors, no answer. They knocked harder, still nothing. They opened doors that were already unlocked. They called out. They searched rooms. They found people in beds, on couches, at tables, all asleep, all quiet, all unreachable. One officer tried to wake a man gently, shook his shoulder, said his name, reading it off a piece of mail on the counter, like that wasn't creepy at all. No response. Another checked for breathing. There was breathing, slow, calm, like deep sleep after a long day. Someone said, "They're alive." That somehow made it worse, because if they were alive, where were they? Ambulances came next, then doctors, then people with clipboards and worried eyes. The city slowly filled with outsiders who didn't belong to it. Still, no one from inside woke up. News vans showed up by afternoon. Cameras pointed at empty streets. Reporters whispered at first, like they were in a church. Then they did what reporters do. They talked. They called it a mystery, a mass sleep event, a medical emergency. Someone even joked nervously, maybe they're just really tired. No one laughed. Experts arrived. They ran tests, checked air, water, food, no poison, no gas leak, no signs of attack, no fingerprints of anything obvious. It was like the people had stepped out of themselves and left the bodies behind. Families from nearby towns began showing up, and they'd heard rumors, seen clips online, a city asleep, a city gone quiet. They came looking for parents, kids, friends. A woman stood by a hospital bed, holding her husband's hand, begging him to wake up. She told him the kids were fine. She told him she was scared. She told him it wasn't funny anymore. He didn't move. A teenage boy sat next to his best friend, recording videos on his phone through tears, saying, "Bro, wake up, please." The video never got finished. Officials tried to control the crowd. This wasn't safe. This wasn't normal. They asked people to leave, to give space, to trust the process. The problem was, no one trusted anything anymore, because this wasn't like anything before. There was no explosion, no disease with symptoms, no enemy to point at, no one to blame. And humans hate that. We like our fear with labels. By nightfall, the city was sealed off. Lights were turned back on where they'd gone out. Generators hummed. Guards stood watch over streets that didn't need guarding. The sleeping city looked even stranger at night. Windows glowed. Shadows moved as people walked through empty homes that weren't theirs. The place felt borrowed, temporary, like everyone was waiting for the owners to come back and ask, "Why are you in my house?" But they never did. Doctors worked through the night. Machines beeped. Notes were taken. Heads were shaken. No change. No one woke up. And somewhere in the back of everyone's mind, a quiet thought started growing. A thought no one wanted to say out loud. What if this isn't sleep? What if this is something else? Something that doesn't end when morning comes? Because the city had already taught them one thing. Tomorrow was not guaranteed. The guessing begins. Once panic wears off, humans do what they always do next. They guess. By the second day, the city wasn't just quiet anymore. It was famous. Everyone had a theory. Everyone was sure they were right, and everyone else was wrong. The first idea was the easy one. It's a gas leak. People love gas leaks. Simple, invisible, scary but explainable. Teams checked pipes, underground lines, old buildings, new buildings. They found leaks, because cities always have leaks, but nothing big enough to do this. Also, gas doesn't politely tuck people into bed. It's the next idea. It's some kind of sickness. Doctors liked this one. It made them feel useful. Blood tests were done, scans were taken, samples shipped to labs with serious names and locked doors. They looked for viruses, bacteria, things with long Latin names that sound impressive on TV. They found normal stuff. Heart rates normal, breathing normal, brain activity strange but not broken, like the brain was on airplane mode. Someone joked, maybe they just need a reboot. Nobody laughed, again. Then came the wild ideas. Aliens, always aliens. Someone online zoomed into satellite images and circled a shadow, claiming it was a ship. Another said they'd seen lights in the sky the night before. Someone else said the aliens wouldn't do this because they'd be more dramatic. Fair point. Others said it was a government test, a weapon, a mistake, a secret mistake which somehow felt worse. Hashtags showed up. Conspiracy videos with intense music and red arrows pointing at nothing. One guy claimed this proved reality wasn't real, that the city had been paused, that everyone else should be careful not to get deleted next. He sold merch by day 3. Religious leaders arrived quietly. They didn't shout. They didn't preach doom. They just walked through homes and hospitals and felt something heavy settle in their chests. Some prayed, some cried, some said nothing at all. Because this didn't feel like punishment. It didn't feel earned. It felt random. And that scared people more than anger ever could. Meanwhile, the sleepers stayed the same. Hair grew, nails grew, bodies shifted slightly like they were uncomfortable. Nurses turned them so they wouldn't get sore, fed them through tubes, talked to them just in case. Some nurses swore they saw fingers twitch, eyelids flutter, lips move. Doctors said it was reflex. But still, hope slipped in. Families brought familiar things. Photos, music, a favorite blanket, a stupid pillow they refused to throw away. They played songs from childhood, songs from weddings, songs from breakups. Nothing worked. One woman sat by her daughter every day and read the same book out loud. When asked why, she said she likes the ending. No one had the heart to tell her the ending wasn't coming. Outside the city, life tried to continue. Stores opened, kids went to school, people complained about traffic and prices, and coffee being too hot or too cold. But everything felt off. Like laughing at a party when you know something bad just happened in another room. Tourists came. Of course they did. People love a mystery as long as it isn't theirs. They took photos near barricades, smiled, pointed, whispered. Some looked scared. Some looked bored. Guards had to remind people this wasn't a theme park. Inside the city, animals were a problem. Pets were confused, hungry, loyal in a way that hurt to watch. Dogs waited by doors. Cats curled next to sleeping owners and refused to move. Volunteers came in shifts to feed them, care for them, try not to cry while doing it. One dog followed a rescue worker everywhere like, "You're awake, you're real, don't leave." The worker took the dog home. No one blamed him. At night, experts argued. Intense. In trailers. In rooms full of whiteboards and coffee cups. They argued about waves and signals and energy and things that sounded smart but explained nothing. Someone asked the question everyone was avoiding. What if they're not coming back? The room went quiet. That question sat there like a bad smell. Because if this wasn't temporary, then this wasn't an emergency. It was a new rule. By day 5, people stopped saying when they wake up and started saying if. That small word change felt huge. By day 7, the city felt less like a place and more like a memory, even though it was still standing, still clean, still waiting. People spoke softer inside it now, like the city could hear them, like it might be offended. They stopped turning on TVSS, stopped opening drawers, stopped touching personal things. It felt wrong, like reading someone's diary without permission, One doctor wrote in his notes, "This place is not dead. It's paused." Another crossed it out and wrote, or abandoned, "No one slept well anymore. Not the families, not the guards, not the experts, not the people watching from far away, refreshing feeds late at night." Because everyone knew one thing now. If this could happen to one city, there was no rule saying it couldn't happen again. And that thought followed people into bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to their own breathing, wondering if they'd wake up tomorrow, or if someone else would be standing over them, whispering their name, hoping for a response. When silence becomes normal, after a while, silence stops being scary. That's the part nobody talks about. At first, the quiet felt loud, heavy, like pressure in your ears. But after days turned into weeks, the human brain did what it always does. It adjusted. The barricades stayed up. Guards changed shifts. Clipboards filled with notes no one reread. The city was still there, still frozen, still breathing softly through machines and generators. But people stopped flinching when they entered it. They learned the rhythm of the place, which streets felt colder, which houses felt wrong to step into, which buildings made your skin crawl for no clear reason. Someone gave the city a nickname, a soft one, like that made it less terrifying. Volunteers treated it like a routine now. Feed the pets, check vitals, turn bodies, replace IV bags, write the same words again and again. No change. Families visited less often, not because they stopped caring, because hope is heavy. Carrying it every day gets exhausting. Some people could only handle it once a week, some once a month, some not at all. A man came every Sunday and talked to his wife like it was a normal visit, complained about his boss, about traffic, about the dog chewing shoes. One Sunday he didn't come, no explanation, no note. He just stopped. Nobody judged him. Kids from nearby towns dared each other to sneak close to the edge of the city at night. They filmed shaky videos and whispered, "Bro, this place is cursed," then laughed too loud to hide the fear. The videos went viral, then boring, then forgotten. Internet theories faded. New disasters replaced old ones. That's how the world works. Attention moves on, even if answers don't. Funding meetings happened, long ones, quiet ones. How long do you keep a city running when its people aren't awake? How long do you pay for electricity no one uses, water no one drinks, streets no one walks? No one liked those questions, but they were asked anyway. Inside the city, plants started to take over. Grass pushed through cracks in sidewalks. Vines crawled up fences. Nature didn't wait for permission. It never does. It just shows up and starts reclaiming things. A tree cracked a wall near an old cafe. Inside, cups still sat on tables. Dust settled on menus offering daily specials from weeks ago. Today's soup was never erased. Some buildings were shut down completely. Too expensive, too pointless. Doors were locked. Lights went off. Darkness returned, room by room. The sleeping people were moved, carefully, gently, like they were made of glass. Rows of beds replaced homes. Personal spaces turned into numbers. Charts replaced names. It was easier that way, or at least it hurt less. One nurse quit after a patient smiled, just for a second, just enough. The doctors said it was muscle movement, a reflex, nothing more. The nurse packed her bag and left the same day. She didn't say goodbye. People who stayed started talking to themselves more, or to the sleepers, or to the city itself. Some swore the place felt different at night, like something was missing, but also like something was watching, not threatening, just aware. Cameras were added, sensors, more equipment. They caught nothing. No waves, no signals, no moments where everything lined up and made sense, just stillness. And then one morning, something small happened. It was so small, most people missed it. A man in bed 317 shifted, not a twitch, not a reflex. He turned his head, slowly, deliberately, like someone changing position in sleep. The monitor reacted, numbers jumped, nurses froze. A doctor whispered, "Did you see that?" They all did. They waited. Nothing else happened. The man didn't wake up, didn't open his eyes, didn't speak. But the silence felt different after that, cracked, like ice that's been stepped on once and might break again. Reports were written carefully, words chosen gently. Nobody wanted to say the wrong thing. Nobody wanted to give false hope, but hope doesn't ask permission. It spread anyway. Families returned, crowds gathered, eyes watched monitors like they were lottery numbers. Nothing else happened. Days passed, then weeks, and slowly, painfully, people realized something worse than fear had arrived. Uncertainty had settled in for the long stay. Not a mystery waiting to be solved. Not a disaster waiting to end. Just a question mark stretched across time. The city was no longer a crisis. It was a condition, and conditions don't always get better. Some nights, guards swore they heard breathing that didn't match the machines, a rhythm too human to ignore. They checked logs, everything normal. They didn't write it down, because once you write something down, it becomes real. And nobody was ready for what real might mean here. The city slept on, the world moved around it, and everyone everywhere began to understand a quiet, terrifying truth. You don't need explosions or monsters to lose everything. Sometimes, all it takes is going to sleep like any other night. The ones who didn't sleep, not everyone went down with the city. That fact came out slowly, carefully, like people were scared to say it too loud and jinx it. At first, officials said there were no survivors. It sounded cleaner, easier to manage. But then names started floating up. Stories, gaps, a delivery driver who skipped the city that night, a woman working a double shift 2 towns over, a college kid who crashed on a friend's couch outside city limits because they missed the last bus, the lucky ones, or maybe the unlucky ones. Depends how you look at it. They began showing up days later, then weeks, standing at barricades with tired eyes and questions no one could answer. I live here. My family is inside. My kids were home. Guards heard those sentences so often they stopped reacting. Not because they didn't care, because caring nonstop breaks you. These people were different from tourists, different from reporters. They didn't stare at the city like a mystery. They stared at it like a mistake. One man stood for hours every day at the same spot, hands in pockets, just looking at his apartment building. He didn't ask to go in, didn't argue, didn't cry. He just stood there. Someone finally asked him why he came every day. He said, "If they wake up and I'm not here, that feels wrong." Some survivors blamed themselves. If only I hadn't worked late. If only I'd stayed home. If only I hadn't gone out that night. Like being there would have changed anything. Guilt is funny like that. It convinces you that you had control when you never did. Others were angry. They yelled at officials, at doctors, at reporters, at anyone wearing a badge or holding a mic. They demanded answers that didn't exist. You're not trying hard enough. You're hiding something. You'd know more if this happened to your family. No one argued back, because sometimes anger is just pain with more volume. Support groups formed, quiet rooms with folding chairs and bad coffee. People sat in circles and shared stories that all ended the same way. They were fine the night before. We talked about tomorrow. They said they were tired. That word again, tired. It became cursed. Some survivors stopped sleeping, not because they couldn't, because they were afraid to. Sleeping felt dangerous now, like closing your eyes was agreeing to something you didn't understand. Some slept with lights on. Some slept sitting up. Some stayed awake until their bodies gave up without permission. Doctors called it stress. Survivors called it survival. A woman admitted she slapped herself awake whenever she felt herself drifting. Just in case, she said. Like that made sense. No one laughed. Scientists tried studying the survivors next. Blood tests, brain scans, questions that went in circles. What were you doing that night? What did you eat? Where were you exactly at midnight? Patterns were hunted like treasure. They found none. The only thing survivors shared was absence. They weren't there. That was it. That was the big secret. One researcher said quietly, "So location matters." Another replied, "Or timing." A third said, "Or we're missing the point." They stopped the conversation there, because missing the point felt a little too close to the truth. Meanwhile, the city kept decaying politely. No chaos, no collapse, just slow neglect. Paint peeled, pipes groaned, dust thickened. The place looked less like a paused moment and more like a memory trying to hold its shape. And still, the sleepers stayed alive. That confused people. If this was a disease, why didn't it progress? If it was poison, why didn't it kill? If it was an attack, why leave bodies behind? Nothing lined up. A rumor started spreading among staff that the sleepers weren't asleep. They were elsewhere. No proof, no data, just a feeling. Some nurses said they felt watched when checking vitals, like someone was listening through the body, like the person inside knew what was happening but couldn't respond. A doctor snapped at them, said they were projecting, but he avoided eye contact when he said it. One night, a power outage hit part of the facility, just a technical issue, fixed in minutes. But in those few minutes of darkness, something strange happened. Multiple monitors spiked at once. Heart rates up. Brain activity surged, like a crowd suddenly waking at the same time. Lights came back on. Everything went flat again. Reports were filed, then quietly buried under equipment malfunction, because no one wanted to ask the obvious question. If they are somewhere else, where? Survivors began having similar dreams. That part was harder to ignore. Different people, different places, same feeling. They dreamed of standing in familiar streets that were slightly wrong. Too quiet, too clean. Like a set built to look real, but missing weight. They dreamed of trying to scream and realizing they had no mouth, or calling a name and hearing it echo back empty. They woke up shaking. One survivor said, "It felt crowded, like everyone was there, but we couldn't see each other." Doctors blamed shared trauma, media exposure, suggestion, maybe. But survivors stopped watching the news. They didn't need help imagining. They were already afraid of sleep. As months passed, the world adjusted again. The city was no longer headline news. It became a case study, a footnote, a remember that weird thing topic. Budgets shrank. Staff rotated out. New faces came in who didn't remember the early days when hope was loud. The survivors remembered. They remembered everything. They aged faster, smiled less, laughed carefully, like laughter was something fragile now. Because every night, when the lights went out and the room went quiet, the same thought waited for them in the dark. Whatever took the city didn't take everyone, and that meant one terrifying thing. It could come back to finish the job. All it had to do was wait until they fell asleep. The first return. It happened on a Tuesday, not a special one, no anniversary, no warning. Just a Tuesday doing Tuesday things. A nurse was halfway through a boring shift, the kind where nothing ever happens. She was charting vitals, thinking about lunch, thinking about how her feet hurt, when she heard a sound that didn't belong. Crying. Not a machine, not static, not imagination. A human cry. She froze. Hospitals are not quiet places. But this part of the facility was. Always had been. The sleepers didn't make noise. That was the rule. She followed the sound. Room 204. A young woman lay in the bed. One of the early cases. Been asleep for months. No change. No reactions. Except now, her face was wet. Tears slid down the sides of her face and soaked into the pillow like they'd been waiting a long time to fall. The nurse said her name. Nothing. Then the woman gasped a sharp breath, like someone surfacing after being underwater too long. Monitors screamed. Staff rushed in. Lights snapped on. People shouted numbers. Someone grabbed the crash cart even though nothing was crashing. The woman's eyes flew open. She screamed. Not a confused scream. Not a gentle waking up sound. A full, raw scream that ripped out of her chest like she'd been holding it in for months. They had to restrain her. Not because she was violent. Because she was terrified. She clawed at the sheets. Tried to sit up. Tried to run. Her eyes darted around the room like she was seeing monsters no one else could see. "Get them off me," she yelled. "Get them off me." Doctors talked fast. Nurses moved faster. Someone injected something to calm her down. Slowly, her movements softened. Her breathing slowed. But her eyes stayed open, wide, watching. When she could finally speak, they asked the question everyone had been waiting for. "What happened?" She swallowed hard. Her voice shook. "I woke up," she said. "That didn't help." "No," a doctor said gently. "Before that?" She stared at him like he was stupid. "I wasn't asleep." The room went quiet. She told them everything in pieces, between breaths, between shakes. She said it wasn't dark where she'd been. It was bright, too bright, like a white room with no walls, no sky, no ground, just people, so many people, all standing, all awake, all trapped, no pain, no hunger, no tiredness, just waiting. Time didn't move right there. You couldn't tell if it had been minutes or years. Conversations happened without sound. Thoughts bled into each other. She said she could feel everyone else thinking. Fear, confusion, anger, prayers, and something else. Pressure, like being watched from every direction at once. "Watched by what?" someone asked. She shook her head. "We never saw it," she said. "We just knew it was there." The room felt colder. She said people tried to sleep there, tried to close their eyes, but you couldn't. There was no rest, just awareness, endless awareness. And then suddenly, she felt herself being pulled back, like a hook in her chest. She woke up screaming because the silence broke all at once. Sounds hurt, light hurt. Being alone hurt the most. "Why me?" she whispered. No one answered. The news exploded within hours. A sleeper woke up. After months, families rushed in. Hope hit like a drug, addictive and dangerous. If one could wake, others could too, right? They tried everything. Talking, music, touch, silence, noise. Nothing else worked. Days passed. No more wake-ups. Just one. The woman refused to sleep again. Doctors begged. Meds helped. Not much. Every time her eyes closed, she panicked, because when she slept, she could still feel them. The others. Still there. Still waiting. She said the worst part wasn't the fear. It was the feeling that something had changed. That place, she said quietly, noticed I left. Guards doubled. Cameras increased. Scientists argued late into the night. Not about how it happened, about whether it was a mistake. One researcher said what no one wanted to hear. If someone came back, that meant someone let them, and whatever controlled that place might decide to open the door again or close it forever. The city didn't feel abandoned anymore. It felt connected, like a room next door. And now that the door had cracked open once, everyone wondered the same thing. Who would be next? And what would they bring back with them? The cost of waking up. After the woman woke up, hope got loud again. Too loud. People rushed ahead like the ending was already written. News anchors smiled the kind of smile they save for miracles. Headlines used words like breakthrough and turning point. Families packed bags. Survivors came back to the barricades in crowds, hearts pounding like they were late for something important. Doctors tried to slow it down. One case doesn't mean a pattern, they said. This doesn't mean it's reversible, they said. We don't know why she woke up, they said. No one wanted to hear that part, because once hope shows up, people stop listening to the fine print. The woman became the center of everything. Tests, interviews, scans, questions that never stopped. She answered the first few patiently, then shorter, then not at all. Every time she closed her eyes, someone was there watching, waiting, ready to pull her back into a chair and ask her to explain the unexplainable. She started calling the place there. Not a dream, not sleep, just there. If I say its name, she told a nurse, it feels closer. The nurse didn't ask what name. Physically, the woman was fine, better than fine, stronger than expected, muscles intact, organs healthy, no signs of decay. It confused doctors almost as much as everything else. Mentally was another story. She flinched at sudden sounds, hated bright lights, couldn't stand being alone but panicked in crowded rooms. Her eyes always looked like they were listening to something just behind everyone else. One night, she asked a doctor a quiet question. Are they still asleep? Yes, he said. All of them. She nodded, relieved. Then she whispered, Good. That scared him more than anything else she'd said. They asked her if anyone else tried to wake up while she was there. She said yes. All the time. She said people screamed, not with mouths, but with thoughts. They pushed against something invisible, like hands against glass. Some gave up, some begged, some tried to bargain with whatever was watching. Did anyone succeed? A researcher asked. She shook her head. I don't think you wake up because you try, she said. I think you wake up because it lets you. That sentence spread through the facility like smoke. Funding increased overnight. More experts arrived. New equipment rolled in. They treated the city less like a hospital now and more like a door. And doors are meant to be opened. They tried recreating the conditions, light patterns, sound frequencies, sleep cycles, even emotional triggers. They played recordings of loved ones' voices, held hands longer, monitored dreams. Nothing. Then someone suggested something nobody liked. What if waking someone up cost something? Silence followed. The woman hadn't come back untouched. That much was clear. She was awake, yes, but she wasn't the same version of herself that went to sleep months ago. She described missing time like it had weight, like something had been scooped out of her and not replaced properly. "I forget words," she said once. Simple ones, like my brain reaches for them and comes back empty. She forgot faces too, names, dates, pieces of herself that used to be solid. She once stared at a photo of her parents for a full minute before asking, "Are they real?" Doctors wrote it down carefully. Families started asking harder questions. If my son wakes up, will he be okay? If my wife comes back, will she remember us? If my daughter wakes up wrong, is that better than not at all? No one answered honestly, because the honest answer was terrifying. Outside the city, the world kept moving, always does. New problems, new headlines, new fears to practice. But this place stayed stuck in people's minds, like a song you can't stop humming. Sleep became suspicious everywhere. People bought alarms that checked breathing, apps that tracked movement, lights that slowly faded instead of clicking off. Anything to feel in control. Nighttime was no longer peaceful. It was a risk. The woman began having episodes, moments where she froze mid-sentence and stared past everyone. Her pupils widened, her body went rigid. "Where are you?" a nurse would ask. She'd blink, shake, come back. "They're close," she'd say. Once she grabbed a doctor's wrist hard enough to leave marks. "Don't wake them," she begged. "You don't know what you're pulling through." That changed things. Ethics boards got involved. Meetings stretched for hours. Arguments went in circles. Is it right to leave people trapped if waking them causes harm? Is it right to experiment when the alternative is eternal sleep? Is this rescue or interference? Someone finally said it out loud. What if they're not prisoners? Everyone turned. What if? The person continued slowly. Wherever they are is stable, and waking them up breaks something that can't be fixed. No one liked that idea, because it meant the problem wasn't how to wake them. It was whether they should. The woman asked to go outside one afternoon. Just air, just sky. They agreed, with guards close by. She stood at the edge of the city, looking at the empty buildings that used to be full of noise. Her hands shook. "They're still there," she said. "In the city?" someone asked. She shook her head. "In me." She said when she woke up, something came with her. Not a thing, not a voice, a connection, a thread that never snapped. "When I sleep," she said, "I feel it pull." Doctors increased her meds after that. It helped her rest. Not sleep, just rest. The city lights glowed at night like a patient on life support, quiet, steady, waiting. Some families asked to stop treatments, let their loved ones stay as they were, safe, unchanged. Others demanded more action, faster action, any action. Hope and fear pulled in opposite directions, and the city sat between them, unmoving. The woman woke up screaming again one night. Not fear this time, anger. "They're getting louder," she said. "They know someone escaped." That word, escaped, sat wrong with everyone, because escape implies something you're not meant to leave. The next morning, monitors showed a change. Not big, but real. Across the facility, brain activity spiked, just a little, in dozens of sleepers at the same time. Like something had shifted, like a signal had gone out, like wherever there was. It had felt the door open, and now Something on the other side was paying attention. When the city answered back, they tried to keep it quiet. They always do. A small spike in brain activity doesn't sound scary on paper. It's just numbers moving a little higher than usual. Something you could blame on equipment, on chance, on someone bumping a cable. Except it happened again and again. Same time, same pattern, different buildings, different people, too clean to ignore. Doctors stopped calling it a fluctuation. They started calling it a response. That word made everyone uncomfortable, because a response means something heard you. The woman felt it before the machines did. She sat up in bed one morning, heart racing, sweat cold on her skin. "They're not waiting anymore," she said. No one asked how she knew. They stopped asking questions like that. Researchers compared timestamps. Every spike lined up with something happening on the outside. A test, a scan, a new attempt to stimulate brain activity. Every time they pushed, something pushed back. They stopped experiments for 48 hours. The city went quiet again. Not peaceful quiet, tight quiet. Like a room where an argument just ended but nobody left. Guards reported strange things. Doors they swore they locked were open again. Lights flicking on in empty rooms. Not power issues. Manual switches. Cameras showed nothing useful. Just frames skipping. Static. A second or two of lost footage. Always when something changed. "It's a system glitch," someone said. No one sounded convinced. Then came the sounds. Low at first. Easy to explain away. A hum in the walls. A vibration under the feet. Like a distant train that never arrived. At night, it got worse. People inside the city complained of headaches. Pressure behind the eyes. A sense of being crowded even when alone. One guard quit after a shift where he swore he heard his name whispered from an empty apartment. He didn't come back to collect his things. Animals reacted next. Dogs refused to enter certain buildings. Cats hissed at corners. Birds avoided the city entirely now, circling but never landing. Nature, at least, wasn't confused. The woman began drawing. No one asked her to. She just started, pages filled with shapes, circles inside circles, long hallways that bent the wrong way, figures standing close together, faces blurred like someone rubbed them out. In every drawing, something hovered just out of frame, never clear, never finished. When asked what it was, she said, "That's as close as I can remember it." One night, power failed again. This time, it didn't come back on right away. Backup generators kicked in slowly, one by one, leaving parts of the city dark longer than they should have been. In the darkness, alarms went off. Not emergency alarms, patient alarms. Monitors showed synchronized spikes across hundreds of sleepers, heart rates up, brain activity surging hard enough to look like panic. Nurses ran. Doctors shouted. Someone yelled to sedate. Then it stopped, all at once. Lights returned. Every monitor went flat again. Normal, calm, like nothing had happened except one thing. A message appeared on a screen in the control room. Just text, no sender. Stop trying to wake us. The room went silent. Someone laughed. A sharp, broken sound. Okay, that's not funny. Cybersecurity was called. Then more cybersecurity. Then people who never give their names. They tore systems apart, found nothing. No breach, no hack, no source. The message wasn't stored anywhere. No logs, no trace. Like it had never existed. Except everyone in the room saw it. The woman started screaming before anyone told her. "They did it," she cried. "They figured it out." "Who?" someone asked. "All of them." She said when the lights went out, She felt the pull again, stronger this time, like hands grabbing the thread inside her chest and yanking hard. "They don't want out," she said between breaths. "They want us to stop." That didn't make sense. Why would trapped people not want freedom? Unless they weren't trapped. Unless whatever there was had become normal, stable, a place where fear faded into something worse, acceptance. Officials shut the city down completely after that. No more visits, no more families, skeleton crews only. Fewer questions, fewer risks. They called it containment. That word didn't sit right either. The woman was moved to a separate facility, far away, heavily guarded, quiet. They said it was for her safety. She said it was to keep her from hearing them. Sleep studies around the world were quietly paused, research funding rerouted. Words like mass consciousness and shared state stopped appearing in papers overnight, like someone didn't want those ideas floating around. Publicly, the story faded again. Unexplained medical event. Patients remain in stable condition. No new developments. Behind closed doors, people whispered a different sentence. "We woke something up, and now no one knew how to put it back to sleep." The city sat darker now. Fewer lights, fewer people, a place no one wanted to touch anymore, not because it was dead, because it was listening. And the scariest thought of all settled in, slow and heavy. What if the city wasn't the problem? What if it was the message? What if whatever happened there wasn't an accident, but a warning? Because if a whole city could fall asleep together, maybe it wasn't the first, and maybe it wasn't meant to be the last. The choice. Nobody wanted after the message. Everything slowed down, not officially. On paper, meetings still happened. Reports were still written, emails still sent. But underneath all that movement, something had stalled, like everyone was waiting for someone else to decide. The city stayed sealed, fewer guards now, fewer lights. It looked less like a place being protected and more like something being avoided. Even helicopters stopped flying over it. Pilots said the instruments acted weird, nothing provable, just enough to make them uneasy. People don't need proof to stay away. A bad feeling does the job just fine. Inside the facilities, doctors stopped trying to wake anyone. They still cared for them, fed them, turned them, checked vitals. But the goal quietly changed from bring them back to don't make it worse. That shift was never announced. It just happened. The woman was kept awake as much as possible. Low lights, soft sounds, gentle voices, anything to keep her from drifting too far. She hated it. "Being tired hurts," she said once, "but sleeping is worse." She told them something new a few days later. "They're not mad," she said. "They're scared." No one knew what to do with that. "Scared of what?" a doctor asked. She shrugged, eyes fixed on the wall. "Of being alone." That didn't make sense. Not when there were thousands of them, millions maybe, if this thing had happened elsewhere too. But then she added, "They're together there, all the time. If more wake up, it changes." "Changes how?" She swallowed. "It thins." That word came up in meetings after that. Thinning, density, connection. Someone suggested a theory nobody liked. What if consciousness isn't meant to be isolated? What if whatever there is needs numbers? Not in a sci-fi way, not batteries or energy or anything dramatic, just presence. Minds close together, a shared weight. And what if waking people up was pulling bricks out of a wall that only works when it's solid? Ethics boards met again. This time, families weren't invited. Too many emotions, too many tears, too many impossible questions. The core question was simple and awful. Do you keep trying to wake them, or do you let them stay? Someone argued that leaving them there was cruel, that no one consented to this, that people deserved their lives back, even broken ones. Someone else argued that pulling them out might harm everyone else still inside, that waking one could hurt thousands. And how would we explain that? Someone asked quietly. Sorry we broke your wife because we were scared of breaking strangers? No one answered. The woman listened from her room as decisions circled without landing. She could feel the tension, like static in the air. One night, she asked for paper. She wrote a letter, not to officials, not to doctors, to the sleepers. She didn't know if it would reach them. She said she just needed to try. They let her write. Her hand shook the whole time. She wrote about the city, about the silence, about the people waiting, about the dogs that still sat by doors, about the plants growing through sidewalks. She wrote, "You are remembered." When she finished, she slept, really slept. Alarms went off within minutes. Her brain activity surged higher than ever before. Not panic, not chaos, something focused, clean. For the first time since she woke up, as she smiled in her sleep. On the other side, something changed. Across the city, monitors lit up. Not spikes, not bursts, synchronization. Thousands of readings lined up into the same slow rhythm. Calm, steady, like breathing together. Doctors stared at screens, afraid to blink. And then nothing else happened. No wake-ups, no messages, no alarms, just calm. The next morning, the woman woke on her own. She looked lighter. They heard me, she said. Heard what? Someone asked. That we remember them, she replied. That they're not forgotten. Is that enough? A doctor asked. She thought for a long time. No, she said. But it helps. That was the moment the decision landed. Not in a meeting, not in a vote. In a quiet understanding nobody wanted, but everyone felt. They would stop trying to wake the city. Publicly, they called it long-term care. Privately, they called it containment. In their heads, most people called it giving up. The world moved on officially. Budgets were reassigned, teams dissolved. The city became a restricted zone with a boring name and fewer updates each year. New generations grew up hearing about it, like a myth. That city where everyone fell asleep. Yeah, weird story. Probably fake. The sleepers stayed alive. Years passed. The woman aged faster than she should have. She carried something heavy, even when she smiled. She never slept deeply again, not fully, but she stayed connected. Sometimes, late at night, she'd whisper updates into the dark, about the world, about birthdays missed, about wars that started and ended, about kids who grew up without parents, who never woke. She never asked for answers. She just talked. And somewhere there, the city listened. No one ever figured out what caused it. No final report, no clean ending, just a choice. Leave them asleep together, or wake them one by one and risk tearing something that could never be fixed. Humanity chose fear over curiosity, safety over answers, and maybe, for once, that was the right call. Because sometimes, the scariest mysteries aren't asking to be solved. They're asking to be respected. And every night, when people close their eyes and drift off, there's a quiet thought they don't like to sit with too long. What if sleep isn't just rest? What if it's a place? And what if, somewhere out there, a whole city is still standing shoulder to shoulder in the dark, waiting, not to escape, but to be remembered. Years later, nothing changed, and that changed everything. Years passed, not in a dramatic way. No countdowns, no ceremonies, just time doing what it always does, slipping forward while people pretend they're not noticing. The city faded from news feeds first, then from conversations, then from memory. Maps still showed it, but smaller somehow, like the name had lost weight. Apps warned drivers to avoid the area. Drones weren't allowed to fly over it. Satellites blurred it slightly, not enough to hide it, just enough to make it boring. Boring things are easy to forget. Kids grew up hearing about it as a rumor. My dad says everyone just fell asleep. My teacher says it was fake. My cousin says aliens. None of them really cared, thus they had their own problems. Exams, jobs, rent, love, sleep, especially sleep. Sleep became something people tracked now. Measured, optimized, watched closely, too closely. Smartwatches buzzed if breathing slowed. Apps sent alerts if movement stopped. Parents checked on kids more than they used to. Couples asked, "You okay?" in the middle of the night for no real reason. People laughed it off, just being careful. But deep down, everyone remembered, even if they said they didn't. The city stayed sealed. Nature took more ground. Trees cracked roads. Birds returned cautiously, like they were testing the place. Rain collected in empty streets and made reflections that looked like people if you didn't stare too long. Maintenance crews came once a month. Same routine, same silence, same notes, no change. The sleepers aged slowly, bodies still alive, minds still elsewhere. The woman kept visiting. She was older now, hair streaked with gray, hands a little unsteady. But she walked the city like it still belonged to her, because in a way it did. She talked as she walked, not loudly, not formally, just updates. Your daughter graduated. Your dog finally gave up waiting by the door. They tore down the old mall. People still argue about stupid things. She laughed sometimes, quiet, sad laughs. She never asked them to wake up anymore. She understood now. Once, a young guard asked her why she still came. "They don't answer," he said. "How do you know they hear you?" She stopped walking, turned to him. "I don't," she said, "but if I stop talking, then they're really gone." That shut him up. One night, far away from the city, a man woke up suddenly. Heart racing, sheets tangled, that heavy feeling in his chest, like he'd just left a crowded room. He didn't know why. He went to the kitchen, drank water, stared out the window. The street was quiet, normal quiet. He went back to bed. Across the world, others did the same thing. Woke up feeling watched or missed, or like something important had just happened and they were late. Doctors blamed stress, dreams, the internet. They always do. No new cities fell asleep. That was the part everyone focused on. See? It's over. One-time thing. Mystery closed. But the woman wasn't so sure. Before she died, she recorded one last message. They found it later, stored carefully, labeled in plain handwriting, for whoever listens next. Her voice was soft, tired, calm. She said, "We were wrong to think the city was taken." She paused. It volunteered. That line never made it into reports. She explained that over the years the feeling changed. The pull weakened. The fear faded. "They aren't trapped," she said. "They chose togetherness over loneliness." She said something else too, something that made the room quiet when the recording ended. Whatever there is, it isn't hunting us. It's offering us something. Connection, shared silence, an escape from being alone inside your own head. She ended with a warning. Not dramatic, not loud, just honest. If the world ever gets too loud, too divided, too lonely, don't assume we'd resist it next time. The recording stopped. The city stayed asleep. The world stayed awake. And every night when lights go out and phones stop buzzing and thoughts finally slow down, there's a moment, just a moment, before sleep takes over. A moment where everything is quiet. And in that quiet, some people swear they feel it. Not fear, not danger, just the sense of standing very close to others in the dark, not touching, but not alone either. And that's the thought people avoid as they drift off. Because if sleep really is a place, and if a whole city chose it, the scariest question isn't what happened to them, it's this. If given the choice, how many of us would choose to stay awake? The quiet truth. Years rolled on, slow and relentless. The world moved forward as it always does, leaving the city behind like a bookmark no one opened anymore. Maps still marked it, roads still led there, street signs rusted in place. Nature crept further with every season, trees bending sidewalks, grass pushing through cracks, vines wrapping around the empty streetlights. The city looked abandoned, but anyone who worked there, anyone who had been close, knew better. It wasn't abandoned. It was waiting. The woman's visits became ritual. She walked empty streets with quiet steps, whispering updates like a teacher reading a lesson to invisible students. Your son learned to ride a bike. Your dog finally stopped waiting. They tore down the mall. Sometimes she laughed softly, a sad sound that echoed off the empty walls. She no longer tried to wake anyone. She didn't need to. Her voice carried farther than anyone realized. Somehow she could feel them hear her. Other humans lived outside the city, doing their human things, laughing, arguing, forgetting. Sleep became something people monitored carefully. Apps buzzed if someone's heart rate dropped. Parents peeked into kids' rooms at night. Lovers checked on each other obsessively. No one could trust sleep completely anymore. But inside the city, sleep was sacred. Every so often, strange things happened. A monitor would twitch. A dog barked at nothing. Lights flickered in empty apartments. Guards swore they heard whispers. Nothing was conclusive, nothing provable. Just the feeling someone or something was aware. The woman once told a young guard why she kept coming. "They don't answer," he said, shaking. "How do you know they hear you?" She stopped, turned to him. Her eyes were steady. "I don't," she said. "But if I stop talking, then they're really gone." He nodded, too afraid to speak. The quiet became a kind of ritual for her. She recorded her thoughts, memories, updates about the world outside, wars, politics, birthdays, the rising and falling of human lives, everything mundane, everything important. Years later, she left one final recording, labeled simply, "For whoever listens next." Her voice was calm, soft, tired. "We were wrong to think the city was taken," she said. "It volunteered." A pause. "They aren't trapped. They chose togetherness over loneliness." She explained that the pull, the thing that had drawn her away from sleep, that tugged at the city itself, was not cruel. It was connection, shared quiet, comfort in being together when the world outside was chaotic and loud. She ended with a gentle warning. If the world ever gets too loud, too divided, too lonely, don't assume we would resist it next time. The recording stopped. The city remained asleep. The world remained awake. And every night when lights dim and the last notifications fade, there is a fleeting moment before sleep takes hold. A moment where the mind flutters at the edges of consciousness. And in that moment, some people swear they feel it. Not fear, not danger, just the presence of the city, of the sleepers. Close enough to touch, far enough to remain unseen. And in that quiet, the hardest question lingers. If sleep is a place, and a city chose to stay there, how many of us would choose to stay awake? The answer isn't known. And maybe that's the point. The city sleeps, and the world dreams around it. And somewhere, in the quietest hours of night, the choice waits. Whether to close your eyes, or to step into the silence and join them. The end